Good morning. Like Pastor Wade said, my name is Katy Kessler, and I am a senior at Ball State. I'm graduating in like 3 weeks, and that's very strange. But this summer I had an incredible opportunity to go on a trip to China for 2 weeks, and I am excited to share with you the journey that got me there. And it was kind of a long journey, a year process of changing my heart before I actually went to go. A year ago, I would have never thought I would go to China, and God had different plans. So that's what I'm going to be sharing about and what we did in China. I was actually outside of Beijing, and we were there, like I said, for 2 weeks. So we'll get started. So the next picture. About a year ago, these are some of the kids. Okay, we can go on. About a year ago, I am a part of a Christian organization on campus called Crew, and we had a team come called the Traveling Team, and their purpose is to share God's vision for sharing the gospel with the nations to college students. And I was sitting, listening to them talk, and they asked us, "Do you feel you're called to missions?" And my immediate response was, "No, not really. I think that's great. I think it's good. I love that other people go, but I've never felt this innate calling of, I will be a missionary." And we were very challenged in that, what God's view of that was and how He incorporates that into our lives. Next slide. So the first thing was, are you living for your agenda or for God's agenda? And this is something that last week when the kids presented their story on Jonah was very evident, and it's so cool how that intertwines into how Jonah wanted to live for his purpose, wanted to live for his calling, even though God was calling him somewhere else. And how God works throughout that. So that was challenging. Am I living for myself, or am I living for God? And God's mission, His vision from Genesis to Revelation, from Abraham's covenant in the very beginning all the way to the end, is that He wants to share Jesus Christ throughout the whole nation, the whole world, and He wants to do it through us. So one of the verses that I want you to help me out with is, "Be still and know that I am God." And that's where I thought it stopped too. But what's the rest of it? I didn't know either. I thought it ended there on every poster and everything that you see. It's "Be still and know that I am God." And I always thought it was a great reminder of how God is with us and He gives us peace always, and He's always in control, which is very true. But we have to look at the whole context of the verse. The rest of the verse is, "I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted among the earth." So God's saying, yes, I'm in control, but I have a story, and I'm sharing it. And I'm on my way to sharing it to the whole world, and I want to do that through you. So that was something I didn't know before. As I started to look at God's vision for the world and started to read my Bible more with a different focus, it was impossible to ignore His call throughout the nations. Over 1,500 times in the Bible, God speaks of His heart for the world, for the nations, and going out. And that was pretty neat to start reading and seeing that. But I also started to get an understanding of blessings and responsibilities. And we are so blessed with God's love, His grace that comes to us that's unmerited, that we get. And that's incredible. But with that blessing, we also have a responsibility as God's children. And this was really personified this weekend. I have two special guests with me in the first row, Queenie and Cece, and they're Chinese students that came home with me this Thanksgiving, and I just loved having them home. And I started noticing as they were a part of our family, and they went to all our Thanksgiving dinners, and we made food and did all sorts of things that families do, that Queenie and Cece started to do something on their own. No one told them, but they started putting away dishes and bringing things in from the car and just doing little things around the house. As they were a part of our family, they felt kind of a responsibility out of their love, out of being accepted. And I thought that's really neat, because that kind of is an illustration of our love for Christ and his love for us as we're accepted into that family that he gives us. And we also kind of feel that responsibility as we start growing closer to him of, I want to go. I want to follow his commands. And I want to be a part of that. So that was personified this weekend, which was really neat. And I started growing and learning that missions is not just a Christian elective. It's not something that we pick and choose. It's something that we're all called to. And that's exhibited in a lot of different ways in our lives. But we're all called to it. I think our culture puts a lot of emphasis on last words. The last words that someone leaves you are the last things they want you to cherish, the last things, the most important thing that they've gleaned from their life that they want to pass on to you. And Jesus, when he was talking to his disciples, the last words recorded on all four of the Gospels were the same things. He was telling his disciples to go out to the nations, to share with them. Like Matthew 28:19 says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." And that's got to be important, if those are his last words that he's leaving to us. So here I am about a year ago, listening to all of these things and trying to interpret how that changes my whole life. How if I am a follower of Christ, I want to be about what he's about. And that's what he's about. So if you love me, obey my commands, is what John 14:15 says. And I thought about this too. I thought about this verse, and a story kind of came up into my mind of when I was younger. And my mom, who's in the second row, she's great, say hi to her afterwards. My mom would ask me, "Katie, I'm going out, could you clean the kitchen?" And sometimes I would do it begrudgingly. I would do it because I had to, and I would get it done, but it wouldn't be the best job. But other times, she wouldn't tell me, but I wanted her to come home and be in a good mood. And that changed everything. I worked really hard, and I cleaned all the surfaces, and I mopped the floors. I didn't just do it because I had to. I did it because I wanted her to see that I tried really hard because I love her. And I was thinking about this verse and how that really relates, how the order of this verse is important. We can't just obey the commands because we feel like we have to. Our heart really won't be in it. But if we're doing it out of love for God, then it makes all the difference. So this is what I was praying for, because at that point, I wanted to obey God, but I wanted to want to obey God. So that's what I started praying for, that God would change my heart for this, that he would change my heart to match his heart. Next slide. One thing that I started learning about was the 1040 window. And 1040 refers to geographical coordinates of 10 and 40. And of the 6.8 billion people in the world, 50% of them live in the 1040 window. And most of them are the poorest of the poor. They don't have very much compared to us, nothing. And 1/3 of the world's population of unreached people groups, so 2.4 to 2.6 billion unreached people that have an unreached people is less than 2% of that population is evangelical Christians. So 2.4 to 2.6 billion unreached people live in this 1040 window. So that's a lot of focus for ministry and an area, and I started learning about this area and praying for this area in different ways. And there are 2,500 languages in this 1040 window that don't have a single verse of the Bible translated into their language. So the hope of hearing the gospel is very small unless there's a change. So I was challenged again, not with, will you go, but how will you go? And I think that looks different in everyone's lives. I don't think all of us are called to pick up and move to Africa, although some of you might be. That's not my place to say in your life. So I was challenged, how will you go? What is that going to look like? And there are lots of different ways. One thing is praying for the world. And I thought about that, and I was like, oh yeah, praying for the world, that'll be easy. But I learned that that's something that we don't just naturally do. It's easier to pray for what we can see and feel and touch, our friend that's hurting or something that's going along in our lives. But praying for the world, that takes focus, it takes time. So maybe it's setting aside 10 minutes a day, or picking a different country each week to write out and learn about, to get educated on and pray for them. Another area is welcoming international students. And at Ball State, we have so many international students, and they're so great. I've had the privilege of getting to know 2 of them particularly that are sitting here in the front row. And it's incredible hearing about their culture and learning and being able to share God's love with them because they're here. And they are the brightest, the smartest of their country, and they're going to be the ones going back and shaping their countries when they go back. But while they're here, what an opportunity that we have to share with them God's love. How cool would it be if they went back to their countries as the future leaders and shaped their country with God's love? Another way is to give, and a lot of you have already been doing that, and I am so thankful. Giving and praying, my trip would not be possible had you not given, and it's just as much your trip as it is my trip because of that, for those that have been praying and giving, because it's all imperative. So I was also challenged that this isn't just something that older people who have established themselves can do. I was challenged as a college student, why aren't you giving? How often do you drink Starbucks? Could you give that up once a month, once a week? How often do you do things with your friends that you don't really need to do? What's $5 that you could set aside every week? And how could that change someone else's life? And then the last is going, whether it's a short-term mission trip just to gain perspective or longer, could be incredible. I know for me, I realized that the world was broken, but I didn't really see how broken it was until I actually went. I couldn't grasp it, and I know that I needed to go. So getting there, continuation, my heart is starting praying about it, starting to come aligned with the idea that I could go and that I should go, but what way I should go. So I was praying, and special should be special, but that's all right. Words are hard, right? I do have a heart for kids with special needs. I'm studying to be an occupational therapist, and they work with a wide range of people with activities of daily living. So everything from feeding yourself to putting on your clothes in the morning, writing your name, anything that you do throughout the day is what an occupational therapist helps people with. So they help people that have been with strokes or car accidents, or people with disabilities, and my focus is with kids with special needs. So I really wanted to go on a trip that would help people with disabilities, with special needs, and kids particularly. So I found this trip through Johnny and Friends, which is a Christian disability ministry, and they go all over the world distributing wheelchairs and sending teams and training and doing education, a lot of different things. And I found this trip to Ethiopia. I applied to it, and I got accepted to it, and it was at the very beginning of the summer, and I had a few concerns. It was pretty expensive, and it wasn't very focused on occupational therapy, although we would be working with kids with disabilities. And my third concern, I'm trying to remember it. I'm sure I'll remember it in a second. Anyways, so I started praying through this. I also just didn't have, the major part was I didn't have a good perspective on support raising. I thought I had 2 different views, and I would fluctuate between the 2. The first one was, all right, I can do this, but it's got to be on my own devices. My very well-worded support letter, how I talk with people, all these things, a good presentation. And my other one was, I can't do this at all. There's no way. But I learned that both of those were not trusting the Lord. That if God wanted me to go, that He was going to provide a way. And I needed to not rely on my own abilities, although He gives us gifts and we should use those. But I couldn't just rely on myself. and I had to rely on him. So I spent 3 weeks praying and fasting and focusing on the Lord, and at the end of, it was a partial fast, at the end of that 3 weeks, the very morning that the fast ended, I got a call, and the focus of that was just that I would depend on the Lord, and that I would line my heart with him. And I got a call that morning from Johnny and Friends, and they said, "Hi, we're really sorry, but Ethiopia is not going to happen. But we have this trip to China. Would you be interested? It's at the end of the summer." Oh, I remember that third thing. I was going to have to miss 2 weeks of my summer job. And they said, it's at the end of the summer, which was 2 days after my summer job ended. It was $2,000 cheaper, and it was very focused on occupational therapy. And I thought, wow, all right, God, I get it. I think you want me to go here. And that just crushed any fears that I had, especially in support raising, thinking, okay, God, if you want me to go, it's going to happen. And I sent out letters, and I met with people, and everything I needed came in just fine. And yeah, so I went to China. This is my team behind me. The focus of the team is sending teams of professionals into third world countries or countries in need, and offering their services. So there were 2 physical therapists, 2 speech pathologists, a special education teacher, and then myself representing occupational therapy. So it was a rehabilitation team. And the focus of Johnny and Friends is of Luke 14, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed. Make them come in my house, and my house will be full. So we were there, and we went to China. I didn't know any of them before I left. And this is Shepherd's Field Children's Village, which is home to about 100 kids with special needs that are all orphans, and they come from all over districts in China. It's American-run. It was started by Americans and Christians, actually, which is very neat. And they have a pretty nice facility that has been donated to them. The next slide. And while it's run, the owners or the starters of this are Americans, the primary people that are working with them are Chinese village women, and they're called ayis. Am I saying that right? Nannies. So Chinese ayis. And they work with the kids. There are about 250 that are employed on a daily basis, and they're the ones that are the caregivers. And working with them was our primary focus, because almost all of them don't know the Lord, but they're the ones that are giving love to these kids. And the view in China of kids with disabilities is a lot different than here. They don't always see it. They see it as something that can't really get better. So oftentimes they don't hold them, they don't pick them up the same way, because they don't see the point in it, and therapy isn't as well known as here, in the part that I was in, at least. They didn't know of occupational therapy or physical therapy and how that could improve someone's life. So while they were very well, had resources, it had been donated by Americans. They had a whole functioning physical therapy room, but no one was trained. So no one knew how to help these kids because they didn't know what it was. So our focus was loving on the nannies to show them God's love so that we could show the kids God's love, and training. So doing videos that they could translate into Chinese so that they could train for future, and teaching about autism because they just don't know really what it is, things like that. This is a picture of one way that we do occupational therapy is working on feeding, and Robert, with the way his hand is, can't feed himself with a normal spoon. So we modified that. We made a spoon that's longer and shaped differently so that he can feed himself instead of having to spend his life being fed by someone else. So, next slide. This is another example of one thing that we did while we were there. An exercise ball works on strengthening, and there are a lot of different positions that you can use to build up your core. So we took pictures of all the different positions and posted them and went over them with the therapy nannies so that they could continue doing this after we left. We wanted to focus on sustainability so that it wasn't just 2 weeks that we were here offering services and then we left and nothing changed. That wouldn't be very good. So next, please. This is just a picture of the therapy room and the IEs working with them as we were training them on how they could do different activities to help strengthen things. Toby is one of the kids that broke my heart the most, and it just shows a difference in God's love, how much God's love can make a difference in someone's life. And seeing that. Toby is 7 years old. He has developmental delay and autism and among some other things. He's nonverbal. He doesn't speak. And about a year ago, he broke his femur. And to protect him, they wanted him to heal. So they had Toby stay in his bed for several months. But he got very frustrated in his bed, so he would start hitting himself. And they didn't want that, so they had to tie his arms to the bed because they didn't know any other way of what to do. And so the femur healed, but it was 9 months later, and Toby was still tied to his bed because they were afraid that he would hurt himself again. So that was a huge concern to me, that he lived his life in a bed. So I begged the IEs, the nannies, to let me take Toby out of therapy, and they were very concerned and not sure. But next slide. We finally got him out. It was his first time in a year to see grass, to sit upright, really, to be held. And Toby, while he was lying in his chair, he was always upset and scared, and I never saw any facial expressions of happiness on his face until the very first time that we set him upright. And this is what we saw. A huge smile on his face of just wanting to be loved. And I think that just shows how desperately God's love is needed and all over the world. It's needed here, but it's definitely needed in the 1040 window, in China, everywhere. So our hope is that we could portray God's love through the nations, that they could see that there was something different in Toby from when he was loved, and start asking questions. What's different? What do you have that's different? And I don't think my trip is really over, because it has changed my heart for people all over the world, and particularly Chinese students. And since I've come back to Ball State, I've been able to make lots of new friends with Chinese international students, which has been really neat, and they have changed my heart a lot. So the ministry isn't over. I still get to go and interact. I actually had, like I said, 2 friends that came home with me for Thanksgiving dinner. Since international students, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but 90% of international students will never set foot in an American home while they're here. And that's huge, reaching out to the international students since they are going to go back. How cool that we have this opportunity to love on them. So it may be different in your life. It may be giving, it may be praying, dedicating time to praying, and maybe go. Maybe that's what you're called to do. But I want to challenge you to pray about that, to spend time and asking the Lord, how is it that He wants you to go? What does that look like in your life?